An interview with Rosa Parks.
Okay. Mrs. Parks, first, why don't you tell us what happened on that day when you were on the bus and the trouble started?
I boarded the Cleveland Avenue bus near 6 o'clock in the early evening of December 1st, 1955, to go home after I had worked at the Montgomery Fair Department store in the men's alteration tailor shop. I got on the bus and noticed that there was one vacant seat that was just back of what was considered the white section, or the white seats. A black man, was sitting next to the window, and I took a seat next to him. Across the aisle there were two women. So we went on from that stop to the next. A few people got on. Now, at the time I boarded the bus, there were a few vacancies in the very front. The back of the bus, from where I was sitting all the way back, was all seats were taken, plus the aisle was filled with people standing. And from where I was sitting on the way back, the next stop, I don't remember noticing who got on. Maybe a few people did get on, but it was on the third stop that a few more white people got on, enough to occupy all of the remaining seats in front of where we were. The one man a white man found a place to stand, and when the driver noticed him standing, he asked us to let him have those seats, those front seats. He referred to them as front seats. But on his first request for the seats, didn't any of the four of us move. We just sat there just without moving, and he said, "You all better make it light on yourselves and let me have those seats." And when he spoke these words, the two women stood up and moved out of the aisle, and the man who was sitting next to the window in the seat with me stood up. When he stood up, I moved my legs where he could just pass by me, and he did. The driver noticed that I was still sitting, and he asked me if I was going to stand up, and I told him no, I wasn't. He said, "If you don't stand up, I'm going to call the policeman and have you arrested." I told him to go on and call them, and that we didn't have any big exchange of words, because as soon as I told him I was not going to stand up, he got off the bus and left for a few minutes. Short while when he came back on the bus, he stood there in the step well in the front of the door and just saw lean on his elbow across this piece right there, something like that, just like this, and was looking back at the bus. But in the meantime, after he didn't drive the bus off and had gotten off, there were a number of people who did get off the bus, and it wasn't quite as crowded. Some few asked for transfers, which he gave them, and some just got off without saying anything to them. Another few minutes, the two policemen came up to the bus, and he had them to come on the bus, and he told them that he needed the seats. And the other three stood up, but that one, he pointed at me and said that one did not stand up, so that was to indicate why he had summoned them. They walked down the aisle, a few steps down the aisle, and was facing me. And one of them spoke to me and asked if the driver had asked me to stand. I said yes, he did. So he wanted to know why I didn't stand. And I told him I didn't think I should have to stand up after I had boarded the bus. Well, I didn't go into any detailed conversation with him. I asked one of the policemen who addressed me, why do you all push us around? And he said, and I don't know, I'm quoting him, I don't know, but the law is the law and you are under arrest. And as soon as he told me I was under arrest, I stood up. One picked up my purse and one picked up my shopping bag. I had a small shopping bag we call tote bags sometimes. In fact, I had been out to pick up a few things at the store before I boarded the bus, and they walked. Well, I got off the bus with them, and when I got off the bus, I asked them if I may have my purse and my bag, and they said yes. And they gave one gave me one and one gave me the other, and they opened the squad car back door, and I got in and sat down.
Why did you choose that point? Maybe you didn't choose it, but why did you happen to resist then? You know, at the time that you were sitting down on the bus, I mean, you knew what could happen. What went through your mind? Why did you decide that somehow today or that day was a day you weren't going to
Well, it wasn't any special day or time, but I did feel it. Well, when he spoke the words, you better make it light on yourselves and get up, I did not feel it was going to make it any lighter for us for me, because I was the only person who was involved at that point. I was not acting on behalf of anybody else except myself in the way I felt then. And I did not think, I did not, didn't see where it was going to make it any lighter to get up then, because it was not going to improve the conditions that we were under. I didn't know what would happen or what kind of reprisal it would be, but I suddenly knew that it was not in keeping with conforming with the orders that he gave. And even though the ordinance, as far as I know, did not say that one person would have to stand up and be deprived of a seat for another race. As far as I can recall, the bus drivers did have police power to rearrange seating in keeping with racial segregation on the buses.
Do you think change would have happened if she hadn't did what she did?
But in this instance, it was not a matter of rearranging the seating. It was just a matter of depriving 4 passengers, the 4 of us black people, for one white person to occupy a seat.
So, I've seen it written in places where you were interviewed, and maybe you said this before, but I think maybe once or twice you said that one reason you didn't get up was because you felt tired. Was that ever?
Well, it was not that. I guess I'm sure I was, but that's not the only reason. I had worked all day and had hoped that when I did get the bus to go home, I would be able to sit and be as comfortable as I could en route home. And the tiredness was not all physical, because as I felt that as long as we complied with this type of treatment, it would not improve. And the only way that I could let it be known to the driver or whoever else would enforce this type of treatment that it just didn't seem to be getting any better, and I had no other choice but to let it be known that it was against my will to be treated in this way.
Were you surprised when the boycott started? I mean, your arrest became a spark that triggered something here in Montgomery, and people got behind it, got behind you. Run out. We have to put some more.
New magazine 5.
Okay, Mrs. Parks, were you surprised at all when people got behind what happened? I mean, the your arrest triggered a boycott here. Were you surprised at what happened, or what did you think about it?
Well, my first knowledge that there was going to be some demonstrations such as Remain on the Bus was when I was told that the young people in the schools and at the local college had said they would not ride the buses. I was not extremely surprised at the reaction of the youth because many of them had already been concerned with riding a city anywhere they wanted to on the bus. In fact, some young men who were members of the NAACP Youth Council would tell me that they would not take the back seat or would sit in the front of the bus on some lines, and the driver didn't bother them in any way. It was quite an inspiration and quite, I felt very elated over the fact that people had decided within themselves that they could and would take matters in their own hands and just not support the bus company, because that had been our problem so long, being the greatest number of patrons on the bus, of people riding, passengers, and actually keeping the bus company in business, and then being deprived of the same comfort and privilege that other people had. It just did not seem what we should as a people do, because the officials could always say that if anybody tried to request and petition the company, and the city officials, most of the city officials, for better treatment or whatever, then they could always say, well, you must be satisfied because that's what you keep on doing. You folks, that's what they would say to some of the leaders, started this, or they're willing to do it and they're not complaining, so why would you be protesting against something that the people who are actually experiencing this tradition or custom make no complaints?
Was there ever a time when you thought that the boycott might not be successful?
Well, once it started, I did not entertain the thought that it wouldn't be successful, because there were many things that were put upon us to end it, but each time they always managed to have the will and determination and the motivation to continue.
What kinds of things did people
Well,
do?
that
to try to stop it?
well, first, right after we started, the black taxi cab companies were picking up people for just bus fare, whatever they would give them. And when the officials found this out, they threatened to revoke their licenses where they couldn't operate. And well, there were several. If you read, do some research on it, that's hard for me to call all the names. There were times when they got these three ministers together and had them to make a statement that it would end on a certain time, and through the effort of Carl Rowan, who was at that time a reporter for Minneapolis Tribune, he got it over the United Press and called down to Montgomery, and many of the people who were the leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King and many ministers and others, spent the Saturday night, the remaining part of the night, going around letting it be known that what would come out of the paper was not true. And so then there were, well, the arrests were made of people who were driving in the car who many times they would be arrested for just because they maybe would accuse them of some traffic violation that they may not have been guilty of, or maybe in a minor violation that they would arrest them and take them to jail or something.
Ms. Parks, you lived in Montgomery for many years before this happened. What was it about this time, or you, or the people in Montgomery at that time in 1955 that made them come together and mobilize behind your arrest the way that they did? I mean, they hadn't done that before. Why'd they do it now?
Well, that's difficult to say. I guess each person who participated would perhaps have their own reason for, and I guess it just took some
Out again?
yeah.
Rolling? Okay. Mrs. Parks. You're in a little bit, honey. Yeah. Mrs. Parks, a few news reports or writers at the time indicated that you were a longtime member of the NAACP. They just seemed to ignore that. Did that offend you? How did you feel about that?
Did it offend me
For them to ignore it?
I don't recall. I had been working as the secretary of the Montgomery branch of the NAACP, and at one time I was also the state secretary of the Alabama Conference of Branches, at least for a year when we first organized. And I was but advisor of the NAACP Montgomery Youth Council, Montgomery NAACP Youth Council. And I didn't recall that our branch has small membership, quite small, and it was difficult to get people to use the NAACP as a vehicle. We were working on the implementing the 1954 Supreme Court decision outlawing racial segregation in the public schools. That at that time, Attorney Thurgood Marshall had taken to the Supreme Court and won the case, and that was what we were actually trying to do through NAACP.
Has Montgomery, as far as you can see, has Montgomery changed since the boycott, and how has it changed, if it has?
Yes, there has been some changes, even though I don't live here. It is evident that people may move about. They have black bus drivers, and they don't have the segregated seating on the buses any longer, and many are holding positions in various places that they did not have the opportunity to do. even in the stores, salespeople. And at the time I was working at the Montgomery Fair, I worked in the tailor shop, and the tailor, coats. The black employees were only those who did physical labor. They didn't. There were no salespeople, and of course, everywhere the lunch counters and wherever they served food was segregated. If they could be served at all, they would have a separate place. But some places there was no accommodation for black people to be served in public places.
This video raises questions, and I need for you to be extremely honest in the comments when answering them. And just so you know, I have 2 questions. Number 1, do you know the name Rosa Parks? Number 2, do you think she was right in doing what she did? Now please be honest when answering these questions in the comments. Share this video with anyone you deem necessary, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.